I finished reading Meditations about 6 months ago, and when I started, I was a bit skeptical. I remember thinking, I am sure there's wisdom in this book, but there's a pretty good chance it's going to be a whole lot of complicated words to say some pretty basic things. And while there were a fair amount of complicated words, this book had an impact on me stronger than I could ever have imagined. It's not perfect, however, and we'll get into that in a second. But first off, a quick explanation of the book. Marcus Aurelius was a Roman emperor that lived roughly 2,000 years ago. And the writings in Meditations were not written as a book, but instead as a journal. He wasn't planning for them to be released to the public. He was just writing in order to reflect and improve. He was simply writing to himself. Actually, that was the name of the writings originally. To himself, or I think it was directly translated to that which is to himself. That's what Marcus named them. And such wisdom, such incredible thinking that has led to the improvement of countless people throughout history that has chosen to read it and learn from it. To find that in a private journal of a man that lived 2,000 years ago is nothing short of astonishing. So not only the fact that this was written by arguably the most powerful man in the world at the time, and also that it contains so much wisdom, but also especially the fact that it has been preserved and saved for anyone that wishes to take part of it and learn from it. And it's still available to anyone that wants it. It's all pretty mind-boggling. But you came here for an honest review, so here are 3 things that are somewhat negative about this book. First off, it isn't exactly an easy read. There are a lot of complicated words in it, and some things are phrased in ways that they feel unnecessarily complex at times. Although that doesn't go for the whole book, and since it was written around 2,000 years ago, naturally the language is going to be a little bit out of date. But it's not the easiest read, and therefore if you are struggling with English, it could be a little bit difficult for you to figure out what he's trying to say. Secondly, it's kind of confusing to buy Meditations because there are many different versions of it. And why is this? It's because Meditations was written in ancient Greek, so the different versions are just different translations, which means that the text in the book will be phrased and written in completely different ways depending on what version you buy. And from what I've understood, some are written with a pretty modern translation and some have almost ancient language, and those can be quite difficult to understand.
I can't read it.
There are few who can.
So it's a little bit annoying that there's so many versions, but I did a little bit of research on what was available to me as well as what versions are recommended, and I am very happy with the one that I have. It's the one translated by Martin Hammond. Gregory Hayes' version is also very good and it's quite easy to read. I think that's the most popular one. Anyways, the third possibly negative thing about Meditations is that at times it can be a little bit repetitive. And while this is something that never bothered me, it might bother you. The reason I think this was not a problem is because even though he gets back into the same topics sometimes, he still phrases it in different ways. And since this is a book you read to take part of Marcus's great mindset, it's honestly just a good thing to hear things multiple times. Because you take it to heart, you internalize it. You don't study for a test by reading through the textbooks once. You learn through repetition. So these are the 3 things that, according to me, might be reasons for you to not read the book. But I do want to say, if these reasons are enough for you to not read it, you're definitely missing out. Big time. Meditations is my favorite book, and I never expected to be so deeply impacted by it. I genuinely hope you do take time to read this book and take part of this genius mindset. So yes, in the end, it's 100% worth it. If you're not super comfortable with English, find the most easy to read version. I think that's Gregory Hayes' version. If you want some tips on other books, here are 5 books you should read this year. And also click here to subscribe. And click the link in the description if you want a free call with me. We'll just sit down and brainstorm ways for you to improve. So I'll talk to you soon. Until then, earn your sleep.